Well, hopefully many of you had a chance to sit in on either our 2 remote monitoring panels yesterday during our committee meetings. But just in case you did not, I'd like to introduce our panel. But first, our moderator, Mr. Andy Briggs. With more than 3 decades of power systems experience, Andy has held senior level positions with several leading generator distributorships throughout his career. He's also been at the forefront of industry trends, most recently founding Power Telematics, an industry-leading provider of generator monitoring and vehicle tracking services. Andy is a member of the EGSA Board of Directors and is also a school instructor for the Raleigh School. He is also an expert on remote monitoring. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Andy Briggs. Take it away, Andy.
Thank you, Hal. Appreciate it. Oh, thank you, Hal, and thank you all for participating. This is a very exciting time. I know there's a huge star power up here, so be careful with the flash photography. But we are very excited to be able to pull this panel together. A lot of people have put a lot of hard work into this, and we're very grateful and thankful for you all to be here. So with that said, let me introduce our panel of experts here to you to my left. First, we have Mr. Matt Adamchick. Matt comes to us from MTU On-Site Energy. Matt has been with MTU for 4 years. Prior to this, he was a design engineer in the nuclear industry. Welcome, Matt. Next, we have Dago Concalves, Digital Technology Manager for Caterpillar. Dago is a 28-year veteran in the industry, having been involved in many different initiatives associated with digital systems, and since 2013 has been responsible for Caterpillar's remote monitoring strategy for electric power segment. Welcome, Dago. Sorry about that, thank you. Next up, we have Todd Howe of Doosan, longtime friend. Todd is a 20-year veteran of the compact equipment industry, having held positions in aftermarket, product support, and marketing. Since 2005, Todd has been responsible for new product development, strategic planning, sales, and application training, and the growth of Doosan's generator and light tower business. Next up, we have Mr. Mario Ibrahim. Mario is with ASCO. He's the New Products and Innovation Director. Mario is responsible for defining business strategy and vision, applying cutting-edge technologies to satisfy a range of customer requirements in power control automation, monitoring, and service categories at ASCO. Next, we have Mr. Beau Lintereur, Executive Director of Global Aftermarket Business for Cummins Power Systems. Beau joined Cummins in 1998 as a senior engineer of special projects in the power generation business unit and progressed to become the manager of global platforms, leading the initiative to standardize commercial generators across various Cummins sites. Next up, we have Mr. Ray Lecuyer, got it right, Business Development Manager with ComApp Americas. Starting as a control engineer for Fairbanks Morris in the early 80s, Ray has more than 35 years of experience in engine controls applied to oil and gas and power generation markets. He has served in multiple leadership roles as a founding partner and president of ComApp Americas for the last 10 years. He is now responsible for business development of fleet monitoring services. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Vito Minneci with Kohler Power Systems. Vito joined Kohler Power Systems in 2013 as Vice President of Marketing and transitioned to the newly created role of Vice President of Aftermarket Parts and Service in September of 2015. Vito has a strong technical foundation as a design engineer, as well as broad North American market knowledge in distribution, development, and product support. And last but not least is my good friend Greg Wischstadt with Generac Power Systems. Greg's 30-year career has been dedicated to product development as either an engineering leader, or a business leader. Currently Senior Vice President of Connectivity, he supports the company's continuing efforts in remote monitoring, demand response, and the development of a global connectivity strategy for Generac. Thank you, gentlemen, for your participation today. Let's all give these guys a big round of applause for their assistance. So yesterday, as Hal mentioned, we had a couple of other remote monitoring panels. And what I wanted to do in order to be able to bridge and segue all of this together is give you a very, very brief recap of what transpired yesterday. Hopefully many of you had an opportunity to participate in those panels, but for those of you who did not, we'll give you a brief overview and a glimpse of what took place. So in the first we had the Distributor Dealer Committee panel. This panel we talked about why even consider implementing remote monitoring, and how does a service company implement monitoring and the benefits to the generator owner and to the generator service company. We went through a few key topics, again, why and how, and we had some great discussions and great questions. We had a lot of open Q&A, and so that went very well. One of the things that we discussed there that we felt was very important for this audience to see, our friends at Power Systems Research, and particularly Joe Zernhelt. Joe, I don't know if you're in the room, but thank you very much for your participation and providing this information to us. They were valuable in providing some information when we asked, what is the generator population in primarily the US and Canadian market today? And so this is the information that they provided. There are roughly 4 million generators in the market existing today, or as of the end of 2017. Now, according to, really it splits up between roughly 2 million in the mobile category and 2 million in the stationary category. So we found this very interesting, but one of the things included in the mobile sector, in the less than 5 kW and the 5 to 18 kW includes small portable generators, auxiliary power units that are on the on-highway trucks, and RV, recreational vehicle generators. So when we looked at this in the DD meeting there, we tried to carve that out, and at the end of the day, determined that there are roughly 3 million generators in the marketplace that require professional service by a field service technician, preferably an EGSA certified technician, right? So this was interesting to us in looking at the overall addressable market of what our service companies are up against. The next thing we looked at is what is the new population of generators entering the market each year? And in 2017, again, there were over 800,000. If you carve out, again, the small portable gasoline generators and the RV and APU units, there were between 250 and 300,000 new standby generators and mobile generators entering the market in 2017, and the forecast for that continues to look steady and strong. So Joe, again, we thank you for this information. But what this led us to discuss is, when we asked the question in the distributor dealer meeting, how many of you need more technicians? And nearly everyone raised their hand, without a doubt. And I think, certainly in this conference and many others, we all understand that we have a severe shortage of good quality technicians, not only in the industry, but entering the industry. So it was really built into a consensus that anybody looking to build and grow their service business, the traditional service model just simply cannot be sustained of getting new customers, hiring more technicians, and going out and servicing those. Technology absolutely must be a part of growth strategy for any service company and service organization. So that was some of the highlights of the distributor dealer. We also had in the Microgrid and Renewables Committee meeting, wonderful discussions. We had some case studies presented by a handful of folks that covered a wide variety of applications of hybrid systems, remote systems, satellite communication, and whatnot. So that was a fantastic session. Hopefully many of you had a chance to participate in that. It was really terrific. But enough of the recap of yesterday. Now's the time to take a look at remote monitoring and connectivity from the manufacturer's perspective. So this kind of brings it all home to us, and again, we appreciate your participation. Now, EGSA solicited questions from members and non-members, and Kim and the team sent it out on LinkedIn, Facebook, all sorts of social media, and even via emails, asking for questions. And quite frankly, we had more questions than we needed a couple of days to answer all of the questions that were submitted. We had a phenomenal response. So it was a challenge, to say the least. But it's time now to get the perspective from the manufacturers. So with that said, I'd like to ask each of you to start out the discussion, and I'll pop it up on the screen here, that for each of you to kind of give us your perspective on what remote monitoring means to your company. What is it that's driving your initiatives? What's driving your strategy? What is your strategy and how important it is to you? You guys are obviously making investments into this strategy. And what do you hope to gain from that? So, Beau, let's start with you.
Sure.
What does remote connectivity mean to Cummins, and how important is it to you guys?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and this has been a great forum, and I appreciate the panel format because I think this is an emerging area that, quite frankly, you can't really put anybody up on stage as an expert. It's really quickly evolving. So for Cummins, I think we look at remote monitoring as just sort of like the tip of the iceberg. It's a piece of a puzzle that's actually much bigger. The industry seemed to wake up maybe 3 years back to some of these trends emerging in the what we call the digital domain. So internal to the company, we actually call this a digital initiative. Okay, so that includes everything from the remote monitoring piece, just acquiring the data from the machine. It includes remote control. It includes over-the-air calibrations. It includes advanced diagnostics, prognostics. But we're still talking about the machine, right? Remember, there's other data that's available to us. Service records, warranty data, parts availability. And there's other technologies available to us, augmented reality. And so we'd look at all that, and we put that all together and say, hey, we really need a bigger initiative to tackle this. Okay, and so that's what we call digital. And it's up there, and Cummins is a kind of an opportunity, but also it has some, I would say, disruptive kind of view. That this is an opportunity, but it has the potential to change the industry in a pretty maybe radical way. And so it's up there as a strategy, I would say, as much as electrification is, quite frankly. I would say, just looking around and doing some industry benchmarking, it seems that most major manufacturers have a similar, they might call it different. You heard of Internet of Things, I think our industry tends to talk about the connectivity piece, the telematics, but this is a much bigger thing. So what are we going to do with it? There's really, I think, fundamentally two kind of problems we're trying to solve. One dimension is how do you improve the customer experience? How do you use all this technology to solve the same problems you've been trying to solve all our lives with metal, right? Better reliability, better uptime, that kind of thing. And the second dimension is how do we improve our own internal operational efficiency? Address quality issues, better designs, more efficient supply chain, more effective service operations. And that's really it, and that's how we approach it. And then the value is a little bit of a debate. And this came through in the committees. Do you charge for the devices and the electronics? Do you bundle it as part of a service? And I think we're looking at all those options. I don't think we're looking at there's maybe a tremendous pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for the digital technology in itself, but what you can do, how you can use the technology to enable a service business or to improve your customer experience with your products, I think we definitely see a lot of opportunity there, and that's where we're focused.
Fantastic. Thank you, Beau. Dago, let's go to you in Caterpillar. We have heard previously in prior conferences a lot of initiatives in the heavy equipment segment of Caterpillar's business, but when it comes to the power generation side, what is the strategy, and is there a strategy for the digital technology side of things?
Well, if I would simplify, top level, it's making better products and services for customers. I think that's the ultimate goal that we're trying to drive into this. So if you, and I agree, it's a much more than monitoring. It's a whole digital strategy. It's a whole digital initiative that is happening. But if you think about on the product side, it's not only collecting the data, but it's going deeper, and it's going into all the calculations that are being made. Diesel engines making thousands of calculations per second, and analyzing that data and seeing what is deviating from the actual situation to what was calculated, what was expected, and learning from those. So it's an opportunity for a collaboration between the actual user and the manufacturer, because we know about what we design, but the user knows what is experiencing. And it's an opportunity to have this communication and the discussion. There's another element that's the whole improvement of the business. So how to get more efficient and talk about the products and services. That goes into the services side. So is having the right parts at the right place, having technicians that are trained with the right literature, with the right information, with the right troubleshooting at the right moment. So it's all improving onto this execution of the service. And be the service executed by a dealership or even by the customer, providing more information for customers that do their own service into this. So what's the ultimate goal that we're looking for this? Is actually customer satisfaction. So if you close this whole thing together, it's customer satisfaction. And so what we're going to be driving with this is loyalty, is purchase of new products, is purchase of services, it's a brand recognition. But ultimately, the nice and exciting thing about the digital is that it's one of those initiatives that there's a perfect alignment between all the way from the manufacturer to the end user, because we're all interested in the same thing. It's how to get more out of the product, how to make it fail less, how to get more efficient, more power output, better service, more efficiency into the whole process.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Vito, why is remote connectivity important to Kohler?
So I guess I'd like to start by thanking the leadership at DGSA and also for the panel for this discussion. It's something I'm very passionate about. I'm going to try not to geek out the entire time and keep it to a normal discussion, but it is going to be difficult. I think we all agree it's very important. It's important for our business, for us internally. It's important for our customers. And I think us collaborating and having these discussions and driving a common message, common theme, is what's going to really help us move this forward in the industry, which is what we really and truly do need. I do think it would be good to start talking about a little bit about definitions, because it does make a little bit of a difference. When I looked at the question, it talked about what is remote monitoring and remote connectivity. And for us at Kohler, they are distinct and different. Because when we look at remote connectivity, I'll start with that, because for us it's pretty straightforward. Remote connectivity is the ability to replicate the user interface, whether it be for the generator, the ATS, the switchgear, replicate that interface away from the unit and be able to control it as if you're standing right there. And there are applications and customers that need remote connectivity to manage their equipment. So that does have to be part of the overall portfolio. But when you look at remote monitoring, now that gets to be more complex. And I'll tell you that different manufacturers and even different service providers have very, very different definitions. But if you look and say, okay, remote monitoring is the ability to get the information, to measure different parameters, different sensors, different outputs, to measure those, to give you information to make a decision. And it doesn't really matter necessarily if it's wired or through Ethernet, if it's wireless, through cellular, satellite, whatever the method, it's getting data from the unit to a server, and then to the points made earlier, doing something with the data. Okay, you don't want to get overly encompassed with how much data we're collecting. The customer doesn't necessarily care about what data we're collecting. The customer cares about what does the data mean. So part of your remote monitoring solution is not just collecting data, it's not just transmitting data, it's really taking that data and turning it into something meaningful that the end user or the third-party service provider or your own service providers can use to manage that fleet of equipment. So you'll see, like I mentioned, a lot of differences in how it's done in terms of what's collected and how it's collected, and it does matter based on the market, based on the application. For example, a piece of mobile equipment, you're going to want to know where it's at, so you're going to want some sort of GPS function. It's important to that customer base, for a rental customer base, to know where it's at. But then you compare that to a standby generator, the likelihood of that moving, unless there's a really bad hurricane, is pretty slim. So you pretty much know where it's at. You don't necessarily need that GPS capability. And so, both of them are critical to our initiative to really enable customers. And that's, again, where Kohler is focused, is how do we enable our customers, how do we enable our distribution network to make the right decisions as cost effectively as possible and as quickly as possible to maximize uptime, maximize reliability. For us, the collection and the analysis of the data is also a key initiative moving forward as we get into predictive maintenance and predictive repair. Right now, for the most part, manufacturers have a time-based or hour-based cycle for maintenance, and it is somewhat of a manage by exception. It fails, and then you address it. Where Kohler is moving forward is to try to be more predictive and be able to tell you before there's an issue and get the maximum life out of those components, because it lowers owning and operating costs and it maximizes your uptime. But the key to all this, where's the real value for Kohler, is that strong connection between us as a manufacturer and the customer throughout the life cycle of the equipment. That constant touch point allows us to be a better solution provider to our customers and a better solution provider to our distribution network. So again, our strategy, although there's a lot of technical pieces, it's really focused on enabling customers and driving lower owning and operating costs for the customer at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Vito. Now, let's move over to Greg. Now, Greg, you guys have been offering monitoring for quite a while, particularly in the residential space, and now you're VP of Connectivity. So obviously, Generac is, by putting you in that role, taking connectivity very seriously. Tell us what you guys are doing and why it's important.
Well, thanks, Andy. Thanks for letting me be here today and share our strategies with you as well. You know, connected solutions are not new to our industry. It's been around for 10, maybe 20 years. It's not new to multiple other industries. It's been used in healthcare and several other places for years and years to come. What is new is that people are starting to see and unlock the value of those connected solutions. They're finding ways to utilize and leverage those connections in such a way that they provide a better experience for their customers and consumers. That's no different than where we see this going at Generac. We have recently sort of highlighted connectivity as a key pillar in our corporate strategy for Generac, pulling it out and letting it stand alone, because we think that the connected solutions are going to allow us to, once again, maintain a better connection and an overall customer experience throughout the life cycle of the product. This is key. We largely sell standby duty machines today, and so we see a customer early on and maybe we don't see them again. With the connected product, we can touch a customer over and over again throughout the life of that product in positive, meaningful ways. As an example, imagine a situation where you have a large population of generators and you can predict a potential power outage coming. To get to all of those consumers, all of those dealers, let them know what's going on in advance is an amazing amount of power. This whole deal is really just a win-win-win. It's a win for Generac. We get better. We get to stay closer to our customers. It's a win for our dealers. They get better, are able to better provide uptime for generators. They're able to maintain a connection to their consumers. Their efficiencies are improved in delivering a level of service and prevention that we've heard about from several of the other panelists already. And it's a win for our consumers, those who own the products themselves, because over time, the generator will continue to have higher and higher amounts of uptime and be much more predictable when it's time for it to run. Last, we get, there's a lot of data that's generated by this. We see this evolving in such a way that today, everything is fairly reactionary. We go out, we load bank a generator, we exercise generators, we look for failure opportunities, we respond to it, we correct. Or we see a failure and we respond to it. As we move forward into the future, we should be able to predict that things are going to happen and respond earlier. Take that to the next step, and we ultimately will be able to prevent failures from occurring. Again, a better experience for everyone involved. We don't even know what the potential of this thing is going to do 5, 10, 15 years from now. We see it as something that's just going to unlock an amazing amount of opportunities going forward that we haven't even envisioned yet. So again, in closing, it's a win for everyone. It's a must-do. It's not just an option anymore. It's going to be an expectation of performance and doing business as we go forward.
Awesome, Greg. Thank you very, very much. Matt, you and I spoke the other week about some of your strategies. Can you tell us what's going on with MTU?
Thanks for having me on the panel. Really enjoyed being here. I think most importantly, having a strategy that you have a plan of what to do with the data when you collect it is super important. I mean, nobody wants to collect a bunch of data and put it in some servers and then never see it again. So you need to have a plan with the data, and more specifically, I think you need to know what data you want to collect to answer your specific questions. Along with that, I think it means having the infrastructure set in place where you can securely, dependably, and pragmatically send that data to a team of analysts who are going to be the ones creating the conclusions and drawing the insights from that data. So touching on security, I think obviously that is our #1 priority, especially when you consider, and if you've sat in some of the remote monitoring panels yesterday, security ultimately depends on how you're transmitting the data. It comes at a big concern when you're transmitting instructions or more data back to the genset, which I guess that gets into a little bit of the remote control stuff, but obviously that comes at a risk and there's vulnerabilities associated with that. Touching on dependability, and what I mean by that is just accuracy and reliability. So you want to be cognizant of where you are, where your gensets are, in terms of, can you even transmit cellularly? Do you have to do a satellite decision? So I think anybody who's consuming the data needs to be dependable, that it's going to be accurate and reliable. And lastly, I think just being pragmatic about what data we're sending is really important, because if you send 10 data points or 1,000 data points to a cloud, that's great. But when you multiply it by the thousands of units you have in the field, I think that's where the costs are really going to start to come up. So keeping engineers and data analysts, data scientists in the loop so they can identify the threshold of diminishing returns is really important, and that technical ability needs to be in there when we're creating our strategy. So I think those 3 things are really important to MTU, and it's important to our strategy as long as the digital space for us is implemented correctly. I think the value we see about that is obviously into, like other people have mentioned, the predictive analytics side, so we can kind of identify problems before they happen and minimize the amount of downtime the genset has to go through. So it's an exciting space to be in, and I think it has a myriad of possibilities and a lot of different directions we can take it. So I look forward to working in that space.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you very much. Now, Todd, you guys are obviously in the mobile space. So, and you guys have been doing some monitoring and quite intensively, actually. So can you tell us what Doosan's doing and going on?
Well, thank you, Andy, and good morning, friends. Very hard to follow such an esteemed group of folks, because we're all sharing very, very common themes in how we're going about this in our businesses. And I think the key thing to take away here is we're in the reliability business. Everybody in this room is in the reliability business. Whether you're a mobile company like Doosan is, that's predominantly focused on rental applications, or whether you're in the standby emergency power space, we're all in the reliability business. And I think, when we do market research, and I'm sure you all do as well, far and away the most important thing that a customer requires and values is reliability. So we look at the digital strategy for us as something to drive toward that utopian place of 100% reliability and uptime. We think the end users in our world very often are rental customers. They're often for temporary need. So the concern isn't so much theirs as it is with the fleet buyer or the rental company that owns that equipment and ultimately has responsibility for it. We're in the portable utility business. There's no question. So, with that regard, I think everything that's been said about predictive maintenance, with everything that's been said about better connectivity to the customer throughout the entire value chain, from the manufacturer through the distributor, through the rental companies, ultimately to the end users. All of that is very much a big piece of why we're going into a telematics strategy, and what we think is going to be first and foremost in our minds as we look at how we implement and what we implement going forward for telematics.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd. Now, Ray is an independent generator controlled manufacturer. Your perspective might be a little bit different. What does monitoring mean to ComApp, and what are you guys doing in this space?
Well, thanks, Andy. And yes, it is a little different. Unlike the rest of the panelists, we are a control supplier, not an equipment manufacturer.
Right.
And so a lot of what I'm going to describe, well, it'll be from a ComApp perspective, is similar to what other control suppliers and even independent remote monitoring companies like your own produce, and the value they issue for their customers. And so at ComApp, we embraced remote monitoring 15 years ago, primarily as a strategy to increase our value proposition and to pull controller sales through. And that's been really successful primarily as an end-user-focused application, and primarily in the higher sophisticated CHP type of markets. And what we do that's a little different is we provide complete control, remote monitoring control, and automation to improve the operation of our CHP customers' fleet, and basically turn that controller and our web supervisor application into their cash register. So it's all about the money. And we're all here for the money, right? It's all about the money. So how do we extend that value? So we have an application that provides the ability to simultaneously monitor the entire fleet in a map view. We have the ability to display a dashboard for individual units, drill into details, so if there's an alarm, you can immediately detect the source of the alarm, take corrective action. You can remotely control various aspects about how that CHP set is operating, heat balance throughout a building, everything that makes money for the CHP operator and owner. And this is more end-user focused, probably, than some of the other solutions here, but with the same basic intent. To deliver more value, less downtime. When there is a problem, we're alerted in advance and get the proper resources on site to make the correction. There are other things we do. We have an API application that allows us to connect our remote monitoring and control into our end user customers' other business operating systems, their ERP, their CRM. And back to the cash register, that automates their entire billing process. So for a CHP customer, they need to be able to document actual power and hot water BTUs produced and consumed at each site, document it with logs, and present that as a billing document at the end of each month or whatever period they're billing. So they have to have reliable evidence that supports their billing. And again, those are the types of things with the API option that allows the customer to ring his cash register. And also now we're seeing energy markets are changing. More and more on-site power, more CHP sets, wellhead site, remote wellhead sets that need monitoring. So all of the players, end users, power aggregators, fleet operators, dealers, distributors, service companies, and the OEM genset packagers all benefit from the explosive growth that we're seeing in the remote monitoring space. So for ComApp, we benefit by adding additional value in our value proposition to the customer, and we convert a component sale into a recurring revenue stream with additional value for both ourselves and our customer.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oops. These chairs are awful. And Mario, certainly last but not least, but again, you bring a unique perspective being with ASCO, and what does monitoring and connectivity mean to you guys?
Yeah, so these guys answered all the questions already, so we'll try something different. Everyone close your eyes for a minute, shut your eyes for a second. Shut your eyes, don't fall asleep. I hear. Okay, open them, please. So how did it feel? Dark, right? That's what remote monitoring means to ASCO. So it's visibility. It's and we start from the customer. We build transfer switches, or parallel switchgear and other stuff. And all of our products, we focus on three things: reliability, compliance, and efficiency. Okay? Because we started bringing in this data, and it was like, okay, visibility is good, but how can we extend that to other things, right? So reliability is hospitals. They want reliability. When power goes down, they want to be able to rely on your equipment. Okay, my daughter had 2 surgeries at a hospital in New York, and that's when it really hit home for me. And there was ASCO equipment in the hospital, of course. We wouldn't choose a hospital without ASCO equipment in it. But it was really eye-opening for me because it hits home. It hits all of our homes here. When power goes out, it's not mission critical, but it starts to become mission critical after a while, right? Wastewater treatment facilities are all dependent on our equipment. Education, fire departments, all of these customers are, they rely on our equipment. Remote monitoring enhances this capability, enhances the visibility, enhances the reliability, enhances the compliance, enhances the efficiency of our equipment. And I'm not talking about energy efficiency, I'm talking about operational efficiency, as everyone spoke about as we scale up. You can't have a service technician in front of every generator we sell, in front of every transfer switch we sell. ASCO is in a unique position where we're in the middle. We see the utility power coming in, and we see the generator power coming in. We see solar, we see CHP, and we deliver the load, and we're able to monitor all of that from a central point in the transfer switch. But as you get up to small and medium facilities, we're monitoring the entire facility in a centralized fashion. Then, like the New York hospital I took my daughter to, it was multi-facility, and we're aggregating and providing visibility across the entire facility. And then you get into what all of these guys are talking about today is how do we, in a distributed fashion, you have generators, transfer switches distributed across the entire country or entire world, how do you scale and able to provide visibility to offer the customer reliability, compliance, and efficiency? So another example we're doing is we're automating a lot of processes in hospitals and other facilities, 911 call centers and stuff like that. If you go to ASHI, you go to these other shows where healthcare related and 911 emergency centers, they are overburdened by all the compliance things that are coming out. NFPA 110, CALIA standards, NFPA 99, CMS, Joint Commission. I mean, the list goes on, and we are taking the data. They said, okay, Mario, ASCO, you have this data already for reliability and visibility, basic reliability and visibility. Can you extend that to automate some of this compliance stuff that I need to do every day? So you guys may be familiar with the 30% testing on the generator where you're looking at exhaust temperature and power. We're automating that entire process. Efficiency, obviously aggregating all the data, centralized monitoring provides more efficiency, installing energy meters across the facility increases energy efficiency, reducing costs for the customer, increasing value, and that's what it's all about. All of us are trying to deliver value to the customer. So when my daughter wins with the 2 surgeries, when the generator manufacturers wins, when the ATS manufacturer wins, when everyone wins, ASCO wins as well, right? It's all about providing the reliability, compliance, and efficiency.
Awesome. Thank you, Mario. Certainly a common theme, win, win, win. That's a theme that obviously we preach every day as well. Well, thank you, gentlemen. What we wanted to be able to do is to give everybody an opportunity to give their perspective on, certainly on the subject. So as we move forward, we'll speed things up a little bit here if we can. Again, there were a ton of questions that were asked by the audience and members and non-members alike, but there were a lot of questions related to the type of connectivity that we should use, whether it's cellular, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, satellite. What advantages and disadvantages do you see with each of the different types of connectivity? And are there any trends going on? And Greg, I'd like to start with you. You guys have recently made some major shifts in your product line.
Thank you. Well, obviously, there's lots of connectivity options out there. I'll take them one at a time and just kind of talk through. There's cell phone communications. Cell phone is highly reliable. Most of the cell phone network is backed up when the power goes out, so it's reliable in that respect. It's secure. The large cell phone providers have security protocols that they put in place that helps ensure that security. It's available when power is out. It's well accepted. It's generally available in most locations. So all in all, cell phone is a pretty good connected option for many things. What are the disadvantages of cell phones? It can be costly. You have the cost of the device, a cellular modem with a SIM card, with communications on a regular basis, depending on how much information you send. That cost can be highly variable, actually. It's not available in every location. Some of the remote areas, you can't use cell phone coverage, so it won't work for you there. Technology does change. Phones change. We all are probably accustomed at this point to getting a new phone every 1 to 2, maybe 3 years on the outside. That's true of connected product solutions as well. So there is an obsolescence that goes along with it, and it can be fairly difficult to utilize indoors. But all in all, a very good communication option. By contrast, Wi-Fi, local internet, is also a good option, and we've recently made this option available on 100% of our residential products because it's a good solution for that particular space. Most people have access to it. I think nearly 100%, somewhere in the high 90s, households today have Wi-Fi in the house. It's extremely low cost. It works well indoors if you can get a connection to the outside, and it's technology stable. There isn't sort of an obsolescence that's going to take place every few years. Even though Wi-Fi routers, the protocols change, there's a good reverse robust strategy in place that allows you not to be obsolete. The downside is you could lose Wi-Fi when the power goes out. That is obviously mitigated if the generator comes on and the Wi-Fi is backed up, you're back in business. You can have some additional challenges in terms of securing a Wi-Fi connection. You're out on the World Wide Web. We all know that there are hackers and all sorts of maliciously intended people who are out there trying to attack things every day. Well, that's one way you can get in. So Wi-Fi is a good option depending on the situation. Next, you move into Ethernet, which is really just a wired version of Wi-Fi, if you want to think of it that way. It carries many of the advantages that Wi-Fi does. The disadvantage is you have to run a wire, right? So it's not practical in some situations, or it adds cost. But in general, technology stable, low cost, and a good solution. Satellite is also available in some cases. Satellite is really a communication mechanism that should be reserved for very remote locations or types of equipment that are going to move around and you really just don't know where it's going to be. Satellite it's reliable, although there are times when you can lose a satellite connection, but the technology is evolving to such that it can be very reliable. It's fairly secure. Where it does miss is its extremely costly solution to implement and maintain on a product. So what are some of the trends in these areas? Well, I guess just quickly going back. So different products, different situations, different connectivity options really make sense. And that's why you see many people offering multiple options on different product lines. In the future, we're going to see Wi-Fi continue to grow. We're going to see threats continue to exist, but we're going to see a huge population of IT professionals who are always out there mitigating those threats. It's also going to be the case as more and more connected solutions in households begin to come into existence. The ease of making those connections and the reliability and robustness over time is going to improve immensely. So we think that's really a good option long term. Cell phone, on the other hand, is probably the best option for mobile devices. Over time, the cell phone providers get it. I was in a connected solutions business about 15 years ago, and it was really difficult to get a large cell phone provider's attention to operate in a way that it would work with a number of connected products. They were worried about personal cell phones. That's changed. That's going to continue to change. It's going to evolve, and those are going to become, over time, lower cost and much more effective solutions. So sort of in summary, it just kind of depends on what your situation is, what's the right option for you, but you really need to make sure that multiple options are available.
On that, Beau, care to add any commentary on that as well?
Yeah, Greg nailed it. I mean, it's hard to, really good, response to that question. What I would say is from a manufacturer's perspective, I think we can provide all that flexibility in one device. I mean, look at what we carry around in our hands here. This thing has cellular, it has Wi-Fi, it has Bluetooth. It doesn't have satellite, but it talks to GPS satellites, right? It has a lightning port. When we were looking at this just even 2 years ago as a company, we were wringing our hands about this and say, how do we get every Cummins engine in the world connected? And think about how to do that. And just 2 years later, you go into the market and you find people creating these boxes that have all of the above. And it's not very expensive. And the nice thing about that is the connectivity piece for us is not the strategic piece, right? That's just the means to transmit the data. And as Greg pointed out, it's going to change. And it's going to be probably like your cable box. Every couple years or a few years, they're going to, phone call might come and say, hey, do you want to upgrade to the new the new box, it gives you more, data, it gives you more whatever. And so I think we need to think about how to architect our solutions and our service to kind of anticipate that this is going to change. But I think the manufacturers are going to try to present that kind of flexibility to the customers, because kind of like as John Katzenberg said, it's like, Rothenberg. Cliff Clavin, sorry. It's having the right tool for the job. You just want the right tool for the job. And there's pros and cons to all of these. And sometimes it's best to let the customer and the service provider make that choice for that application.
All right, thank you. And Vito.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to repeat too much. But, Beau hit on something that I'm going to touch on a little bit as well. Is the connection piece is not the strategic piece. I want to make sure that that's clear. What's strategic is getting the data and what you're going to do with the data and how you're going to present the data. I will tell you, though, that even though the connection is not the strategic piece, it typically is the biggest piece of frustration for the end user customer or for the installer. Some of it has to do with training, some of it has to do with just following the right process, and some of it has to do with availability. So I'm going to also touch on some of the solutions here because it really can't be a one-size-fits-all. If you try to say, it's this one communication method is the one that's going to work for everyone, I'm just going to tell you right now, that's not true. So for example, I'll start with hardwired. In reality, they are the most reliable. My generator in my home is hardwired. And yes, I had to run a wire, and you do sometimes have an incremental upfront cost if you don't have a generator-ready home or a communication-ready home. So you run that wire, there is upfront cost, but then from that standpoint, on Kohler product, that connects right to the controller. There is not an additional device. Life is good. So the other piece of that then is Wi-Fi, as was mentioned earlier. Very similar, but the difference between Wi-Fi and something that, from a Kohler perspective, we had to work through several years ago was the connectivity through someone's router, especially in a residential unit, but even in some industrial sites. Each router is a little bit different, and you really sometimes need an IT professional to be involved just to make that connection because of firewalls or other IP protocols. So it can be more complicated, but once again, once you have that system set up, it is a little bit more of a piece of data, but you don't have that typically have that recurring data cost. Cellular is ideal if there's good coverage. I will tell you that one of the benefits of where I live is I have 0 cell coverage. So nobody can call me when I'm in my house.
I'd stick to that story.
Yeah, no, it's actually true. I may turn the phone off, but so I do actually still. I'm one of the few houses in North America that has a landline because I have to. And I don't live in the middle of the desert. I live in Wisconsin, just a little bit south of Kohler. And it's a rural enough area that doesn't matter who the provider is, I don't have a cellular signal. And that being the case, I have to go through internet, and a cellular solution wouldn't work for me. And I'm going to tell you that may be somewhat of an exception, but there are certainly pockets, not only within North America, but throughout the world, where you don't have that signal. And so it won't work for everyone. And you also then have the cost of the data. All right, so if you think about, look at your cellular phone. Anybody that has kids that is watching movies or playing Fortnite now on their cell phones, right? Yeah, I see some nods there. Your data goes straight through the roof, right? And so if you have a cellular solution, part of what you have to manage is how are you going to bundle and communicate that data? It has to be more of a change of state. On my hardwired solution, it's perfectly fine chugging data every few seconds, and I know what's going on at any point in time. I can even look at the frequency when my generator's running. I can look at my batteries charged. I can look at the RPM of the engine using OnQ. If I had to do that with cellular, I would not want to imagine having all that data coming in that method. So you have to bundle and you have to batch that data to have that come out. As mentioned before, satellite solutions. So satellite and cellular also give you the GPS for a mobile product. Satellite is probably the most reliable. Yes, there are some areas where you can't communicate, but it's also the most costly. In my prior life, I did a lot of work with remote monitoring using Orbcomm was a satellite provider at the time. They're out of business now. The costs were astronomical. It couldn't be managed. And quite honestly, that's why that model didn't work, going through satellite and the constant flow of data. I do think the other panel members mentioned technology continues to evolve. So this is always going to change, and we as manufacturers have to be flexible enough and adaptable enough to see what trends are coming and how do we build and support those trends. What I'll tell you though, the customer really needs to understand what their site needs are, what the capability is where the unit's located, and what their total cost is. And they have to be part of that solution. Trying to thrust a solution on them just isn't going to work. It's going to be unique for the different site. Just one more point. You know, again, the data collection and transmission is not the strategic piece. The real value in terms of what you can provide for the customer is that user interface. How are you presenting the information to them at the right time and the right level of information that allows them to make decisions? To me, that is really where the big strategic piece is and how you're communicating with customers. Last piece on trends, I think the big thing we're all seeing right now is the connected home, right? Some of you may not know this, so I apologize if this is new. Kohler also gets involved in kitchen and bath fixtures in the home.
Heard of that.
But you may have noticed now that Kohler, like the mirrors in the bathroom are connected, and you can tell the lights behind the mirrors to go on and off. And they have smart toilets that they do a lot of things that I'm not interested in. But but my point is that's all part of your connected home. For an example, who has either Alexa or the Echo or Google Home? I mean, I see a large number of hands here. I don't like them eavesdropping. They sometimes get involved in conversations that I don't want them involved in the home. But that's where the trends are going. And so from a generator perspective, we're seeing that your HVAC systems are getting connected. Your security systems are connected. It makes sense that logically moving forward, the generator in the home is also going to be connected as part of that home solution, no different than large facilities have a facility management system. So that's where we really have to drive.
Great, thank you, Vito. Going to actually shift up a couple of things here in the essence of time, and I want to segue over to Todd for a moment. We want to talk about and address the mobile generator market. After all, it is 1/3 of the population of existing generator sets as well as those entering the market each day. So I'll bounce through a couple of these and then we will probably come back to it. So Todd, what are some of the typical needs in your business besides location tracking? What do you as a manufacturer want to monitor and why, and what's the value to your customers?
Well, I think there's a lot of different facets to that, and it's a great question. I think the technology choices for us get a little bit more narrowed down because our product is inherently mobile and usually transient in nature and short-term use. So cellular for us, as I'd say, is primary, but at Doosan, like a lot of things, one size fits some, and you need other bespoke solutions for some of those more complex applications we get into day to day. So satellite certainly plays a part in our world as well. As a manufacturer, greedily, I want every bit of data that machine can generate from cradle to grave, right? Because that gives me the ability to feed that to every different stakeholder within our company. So I don't think we're going to be there in short order, but as we start looking at it, there's needs the engineering team has in terms of designing better product, more robust product. There's key advantages our service organization can leverage by being able to help our dealer network troubleshoot and support products in the field that may not be operating optimally. The fleet guys, large fleets in particular, seem to be well ahead of the curve in terms of finding ways to take this data and eliminate back office inefficiencies in their organizations by automating a lot of processes. Somebody mentioned earlier in the CHP world, automated billing, and I think that's something that's starting to make its way into larger fleet customers that have fairly sophisticated ERP systems. As that gets a little bit easier and the hurdle of getting the data to the right place becomes a little bit less challenging for smaller enterprises, I think you're going to see that work its way into smaller and smaller organizations as well. Again, my world is very rental focused, so a machine that comes through the geofence back into the rental yard, for instance, and automatically generates a work order to get maintenance work done, automatically communicates back to the system that the machine is on the ready line, ready to go, is a key is a key differentiator, I think, that can save a lot of cost for rental companies, big and small, ultimately.
Todd, let me ask you, I mean, do you see the rental market changing any in that respect? There's been a lot of questions asking about, I'd like to be billed by usage as opposed to the traditional time, 40 hours at single shift, double shift, triple shift, things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are definitely some efforts at that to bill by the hour or go to more of a utility-based billing model. And I think there are certain customers and certain applications where that can be valued and be a differentiator for a rental company. So I think that's still emerging. I don't think it's mainstream yet, but I think it's something
machine's taken out of the equation, so then there's got to be some.
Yep, go from renting equipment to renting a service. Exactly right.
Right. Awesome. Dago, any clarity or anything you want to add when it comes to mobile equipment? You guys do a little bit of that.
Yeah, we do. When it comes into the mobile equipment, I think that there's two elements. So it's kind of one is the ability to track, and I will not repeat over, but it's important to keep in mind the technology, because there are places with dark areas and different systems, especially when you go global. For example, FEMA was talking about. You're picking up a Genset fleet from North America and moving into the Caribbean. The systems may be different, and interconnectivity may be more complex. But in terms of the business itself, there is the element. I'll take a different angle from Todd, in terms of how the operations are becoming different. You just think about the 1,000 Gensets dispersed through the country, and you're having to run behind them, trying to figure out how many hours, which ones have to change filters, which ones have to do maintenance, and all those things. Connectivity is going to move from something that's nice to have to be fundamental for rental companies to compete. It's going to be a differentiator in terms of how they do business. It's going to be a factor driving their costs down so they can be competitive.
Awesome, thank you. Let me shift gears for just a moment as well here. And Mario, I'd like to come to you. You talked about, and I think we even have a question on some of this, but as far as customers looking to tie in generator systems to building management or SCADA and things of that nature, and certainly in your world, when it looks for building automation and building management, is that something that is easily accomplished, a difficult thing, or a difficult task? Because we had a number of questions on how do we tie into other systems.
Yeah, so ASCO has been providing interfaces to other monitoring systems and ERP systems for a long time, whether it's a power control system, SCADA, or a transfer switch. I would say it's getting a lot easier, but there's a lot of challenges, right? There's hardwire connectivity, there's serial connectivity, there's 232, there's RS-45, and that's just the type of wiring. Could be some wireless communication, Zigbee. And then there's the protocols, right? There's Modbus, there's BACnet, there's SNMP, there's JSON APIs, there's a bunch of other protocols, proprietary protocols that the building management systems, or it could be an energy monitoring system, or it could be an IT management system, ITMS, IT management system. They want to get that data in all of these different formats and protocols. Just like the wireless, Wi-Fi, cellular, it just doesn't fit every application. So for a BMS system, they probably would like BACnet or Modbus. So what our system does is it takes in all of these different types of wires and protocols and everything else, and it makes it available to the BMS people through BACnet or Modbus, gives it to the energy people, energy monitoring systems through SNMP, JSON API for an ERP system. So it kind of bridges the gap between the facility side and the IT management side or building management side by providing these open protocols to all of these systems.
So, it's not an easy task. Obviously, it can be done, and don't know that is the large predominant majority of applications, but there were questions asked about, because it seems like a lot of dealers and distributors get asked and pulled into, well, I'd like to connect this to my own system, if you will.
Right.
And it's just not that simple, quite frankly. Matt, do you have anything to add or comments on that as well?
Yeah, I think Mario nailed it. I mean, the communication protocol is just, it's huge. So it's not necessarily guaranteed that the customer is going to be communicating over the same protocol in which we're sending data over. So yeah, great point. I think the next stage in that is data verification. So if we're sending 10 data points or 20, 30, 100, I think we need to go through each data point with the customer to make sure what we're transmitting is what they're receiving and what they're requesting. So I think of in terms of like alarms, is our definition of an alarm the same as the customer's definition of alarm? If they see an alarm come over, are they expecting the genset to shut down, or is it more of a warning or a notification? So I think aligning on channel naming and definitions is very proactive.
I appreciate that, Matt. Yeah, that again, we had a number of questions from the audience. We've bounced around a couple, and we skipped over cybersecurity. Certainly, it's been in the headlines a lot. And I think, Mario, in your world, cybersecurity is a real critical factor, maybe more so than in the traditional genset world, standby gensets. But I think we all agree, I mean, the cellular connectivity is pretty isolated, but there are obviously a lot of things and protocols and all to take place, particularly with paralleling gear in hospitals and things of that nature. So if you have 30 seconds that you want to add or comment on that.
Yeah, so the 30-second answer is, the way we handle it is we have people. Cybersecurity is moving so fast, and when we plug one hole, the weasel pops up in another hole. So it moves so fast that we need people to keep up with it. So we have certified people in our company. We actually have certified ethical hackers. It's a real certification, by the way, that are focused just on security. The second thing is how many, something simple, how many devices out there has the default username and password, for example. That's a big no-no in cybersecurity. You got to force the customer to change the password at the first time they log in. Another thing we're doing is encryption. We're encrypting at the device level. So, and I think a lot of other companies are going to be following suit where we're encrypting data, where if I'm having communications with a person up here, everyone here can understand me. But if I jumble it up and we communicate through jumbled messages, no one else will be able to attack and do controls and take over my communications with this other device.
Right, well, thank you. I did want to touch on that. Again, like a lot of sessions, we were compressed on time. We have a number of other questions that we wanted to ask, but as we are wrapping it up and about out of time here, I did want to go through and ask each of you, tell us, and you've touched on some of this, where do you envision all of this going in the next 5 to 10 years? Not only from your company's strategy, but just your own personal opinion. Obviously, the connectivity and the remote monitoring has been a major topic in this conversation of this conference. But where's all this going? What do you see in the next 5 to 10 years? Beau, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think, we hit on the themes. I think maybe Greg said, I think this is going to be inevitable. It's inevitable. I mean, I think it's going to be a standard expectation that my device, just like when I was walking in here, I was changing my thermostat and putting on my alarm system because I'm heading to Columbus after this. It's just going to be an expectation that that kind of connectivity, that kind of engagement with the asset is there. This theme of the triple win, I think manufacturers are going to use this information to improve our products, improve our quality, improve our designs, design a more efficient supply chains. Try to improve our customer experience with our products. If we do a good job, we should be taking complexity away from our customers. I think the danger is we might take this complexity and turn it right back and flood them with too much information. It was said on the service provider side, I see dealers, distributors, service providers transforming their businesses using this technology, moving to more of a proactive mode. That's one of the themes that came up in the session. Just really using the information to get ahead, and again taking complexity away from the customer, creating a better customer experience. And then the customers themselves, they will have more engagement with their, I think I say inside of Cummins is that the thing that's a little different than the power gen market sector than our other markets is nobody's sitting on top of the generator operating it, right? So there's a generator in this building, and who knows what's going on right now, and it's a rainy day, and who wants to go outside and check? It gets a customer more engaged with their asset, gets them more engaged with the people they're doing business with. So I think that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Dago, next 5 to 10 years, where do you envision all this, and where does Caterpillar envision this going?
I think we through the sessions here, we talked about even some of the questions were about pushbacks on the connectivity. And we really believe that connectivity, remote monitoring, is going to be moved from a debatable option into a fundamental need. And what it's going to do is also going to change completely how we do business. You can think about the generation it's in preschool today. When they get to the age of managing products, they're going to be laughing at us that we did maintenance based on calendars, or you waited for the alarm to come on to do something, because this is going to change completely. So, and this is going to happen fast. So we're going to see this change happening in everything. And you can even talk about things that sound futuristic today, but they're just around the corner. Augmented reality. A mechanic coming in and the genset telling where is the problem and going for this. You're not needing service manuals anymore because it's all there in front of your eyes. Digital twin, which is another thing. So you're having it, Beau was talking about this cooperation. So as the engineer at the factory seeing the same product and the person on the field is seeing the same drawings that the engineer in the factory. So you bring the two environments together. So in 5 to 10 years, this is going to be completely changed. The next generation that comes into this will laugh at us like people, like the generation today laugh at about the rotary phone, and it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe this is only 10 years old.
Oh, yeah.
So, fantastic. Greg, let's hear from you. What next 5 years, 10 years, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is going to have similar answers as you've heard to this question. We all live in a connected world. We're moving into the connected age, where everything around us is connected in some way. The concept of win-win-win for everybody involved, I think, is an important concept that will continue to evolve. I like to think of it as win cubed, because this thing is going to scale at an exponential rate. It's not going to be a linear function from this point forward. And so we want to think about it that way. We've only begun to unlock the possibilities of what is going to happen down the road. And I think as we get into it, as we drive it, as we all drive adoption with consumers and end users, we're going to find more and more value at every moment. And it's really anybody's guess where it goes next. But who would have thought that Tesla would have connected all their cars? They have a brake failure, and less than 24 hours later, they've pushed a revised firmware to every car that they've ever manufactured, completely eradicating that failure mode and making those cars once again safe. No one would have ever envisioned that would have been the case. This will be very similar.
Awesome. Vito, where's all this headed?
Well, I'm going to make a bold prediction. And I just want you to envision a time where we start to merge the data analytics and artificial intelligence, so that what's going to happen is a generator is going to notice that they're seeing a vibration. They're going to diagnose what that problem is by researching what's available. They're going to order the parts. They're going to contact the technician to schedule a service time without any manual intervention whatsoever. We have the technology really to do that today. It's just very, very complicated right now, and right now it's cost prohibitive. But just imagine that your generator is going to basically pick up the phone, it won't pick up a phone, but pick up the phone and call and schedule parts. They're going to schedule the technician. They're going to tell the technician, here's exactly what you need to bring in terms of tools, and here's the procedure you need to follow. That's the vision that we're heading toward. And I don't think it's that far off in the future. I think we're going to blink and it's going to be here.
Awesome. And it sounds like all of you are investing in that as well. So very quickly, Matt, where do you see all this going?
Yeah, well, as everyone said, I mean, it's going to be a standard. You know, I think back 10 years ago, not to reuse the iPhone story, but there's a group of us, and obviously I wasn't the first one to get an iPhone out of the group of my friends. So that one person who had it, we'd call it the magic phone. Hey, just pull out your magic phone. Where do we got to go? Where are the directions, you know? So I think everything is moving towards that, and especially when you start talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, I mean, there's so many predictive techniques out there that it's gonna revolutionize the industry. And you know, data collection isn't revolutionary, but right. You know, it's the predictive side of it.
Fantastic. Ray, your comments and color on this.
So I can imagine Soon, someday soon, when we need on-site power, we'll just Uber it. It's a disruptive technology, and why not just Uber your on-site power? Really, it gives the opportunity to entirely change the business model in our industry. So for example, I wrote down here on an airplane with engines that aren't paid for. They're not owned by the airline, they're not even rented. The airline pays for the thrust. And I can imagine sometime soon, just like Uber, this disruptive technology will change from our selling iron to selling electricity. And everything we've discussed here today leads toward that. We'll talk about it in 2028, right?
Right. Back here, right? No.
Yes, I'll be there.
Todd.
Succinctly, I see three things. We will make it standard, we being the industry. We will monetize it in a meaningful way that's impactful to all of us, whether you're the manufacturer or the distributor. And three, probably the most important, is we will have connected the value chain from end to end, whether you're the component supplier, the set builder, the distributor, the installer, the end user. It's all going to be connected end to end.
And Mario, your final comments.
Yeah, so the future, it's right now it's just we're collecting data, and everyone's doing that. Going into some cloud, right? So all the data's in the cloud, and the data's being analyzed in that one cloud, in kind of a silo cloud, but it's bringing in a lot of data to be analyzed and pushing out the value to services and manufacturers getting value out there, the end users getting value. But now you have all these clouds and silos. Think about it. You have all these clouds and silos. The next step is the next step is not Internet of Things, it's going to be Internet of Clouds. And we're going to connect the clouds together and start reaping additional benefits. I don't know what those benefits are, but I think it's really exciting to figure out, to connect all this stuff together and be able to mesh and find dependencies and find value from multiple siloed things that were connected together. And now we're going to connect all the clouds together and increase the value even more for the customer.
Fantastic. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. We need to wrap this up, but I want to give a big round of applause for our expert panelists. Thank you very much for your participation.
Nice job.
Very good.